Hey guys, it's Miss Willis, and today we're going to be doing notes over the circulatory system, also called the cardiovascular system. So, what's its function? Obviously, blood is flowing around the body. That gives us heat around the body. It gives us exchange of gases, getting oxygen onto our cells, getting carbon dioxide off of our cells. Getting nutrients moved around. We were just talking about in the digestive system how all those nutrients get absorbed in the small intestine, and then where do they go? Around the body. How do they do it? In your blood vessels. So there's pulmonary circulation, which is where we're getting oxygen onto our blood cells in the lungs. So that's when blood flows from the heart to the lungs. And then we have systemic circulation. This is when there's oxygen on your blood cells and it's being pumped all over your body. So from the heart to the whole body. For your heart structures, when we cut open the pig, the heart is in its it's a little white sac. It looks white because the pig is dead. But that sac is called pericardium. It's a tough tissue and it's actually protecting the heart, and there will be fluid between that. So you say that this is the heart wall and this is the pericardium. In between that will be fluid called serous fluid, if you want to know, and it prevents friction, because if that fluid wasn't there, then when your hands rub, it starts to heat up. But if there's water in between them, then they just glide nice back and forth. And so then your heart isn't bumping up against anything and causing friction every time it beats. Where is it located? In the thoracic cavity, which is anything within your rib cage. And it has 4 chambers. The top ones are the atria, singular, atrium. The bottom ones are the ventricles. For the atria, if you've ever been to like a big fancy hotel or a big fancy building, it'll be like the welcoming center. The area where you walk in will be like some grand atrium. It's the same thing in the heart. It's an entrance, right? It's where all the blood is coming into the heart, just like it's where you're walking into the main entrance into the hotel or wherever you are. So the atria, one of them, here's one here. There's one that we can't quite see that well over here because of the twist. Down here is a ventricle, and down here is a ventricle. We'll look at them more in another image. So with the right atrium, here we go, seeing them better. Notice how it's like, wait, I thought that's the left. Right and left is always used from the perspective of the patient. So this person's heart, we're looking at it from the front. Well, this is my right side, but when you're looking at it, it kind of looks like it's to your left, right? So this is my right side. So on this side would be my right atrium. And so that's how we're seeing it here in this picture as well. Up here is the left atrium. Down here is the right ventricle and the left ventricle. Notice this big thick wall in between the ventricles. That's called the septum, or atrioventricular septum. But over here, from the right atrium, this is where blood comes from the body back to the heart to get new oxygen. Then it gets pushed down into the right ventricle, and then that's going to shoot up through here to the lungs. This is the pulmonary artery. Let me say these words here for our valves real quick, and we're going to go to this image afterward. Atrioventricular valves, AV valve. This is generally talking about our first one called the tricuspid valve. Tri meaning 3. You'll see 3 little tendons holding onto it. Then on the left side, we'll have the mitral valve or bicuspid valve. You'll see 2 little tendons. The name mitral comes from a bishop's mitre, which I don't know if you know much about like religious figures and like the weird hats that they wear, but there's one that it looks like this. It looks like this. I don't have my like paper to do it. Big tall hat. I don't know. Google up a picture of a bishop. They've got like these big tall hats, and I'm gonna be honest, I don't see it, but somebody looked in the heart and that's what they saw, and it stuck. And now people refer to it as the mitral valve. Then there's the pulmonary valve, which is gonna make sure blood doesn't flow the wrong way when it's being pushed to the lungs, and the aortic valve when blood's being pushed to the aorta, which then sends everything to the whole body. So heart valves are doors that prevent blood from flowing the wrong direction. We only want blood flowing in one direction. I need a One Direction song after that. But with that, sorry, one of you just sent me an email. Sometimes people have, you'll hear that someone has a hole in their heart. My friend, her son has a hole in his heart. He has to have open heart surgery to close it. We all have this when we're first born, or before we're born. We have this hole to bypass the lungs, and because we're not using them when we're growing inside of mom. And once you start taking your first breath, that scars over. And in some people, it just never scars. And so in their chambers where your valves are preventing blood from flowing the wrong way, in these people, there's a little hole where some blood is leaking out into the next chamber when it's not ready to go there and it doesn't have new oxygen on it. So looking at all the structures, right here, right atrium, where blood, we can even start back here at the vena cava. This is where blood is coming from the body. So the superior coming from your head and arms and shoulders. Down here is the back end of the inferior vena cava, and it comes from everywhere below your heart. So all your abdominal organs, your legs, etc. And it's going to meet up on the back side here, and then they dump in to the right atrium. Then we have that tricuspid valve. And notice how these have these little tendons. Have you ever heard the phrase, like when you have a crush on someone, that they're tugging on your heartstrings? That's where this comes from, is that there's literal heartstrings, these little tendons in your heart. They're called chordae tendineae, if you have any interest in that. Then we get down to the right ventricle. That is going to then push blood into the pulmonary artery. Its pulmonary valve, once blood gets into that artery, will prevent it from flowing backwards. And why is it that we need to prevent it from flowing backwards? Think about when you've squeezed something before. When you let go, there's recoil, right? And so like pressure opens up in here and it's going to suck things in. And if we do that, then anytime our heart pumped, if there weren't valves, the blood would just go forward and come back and go forward and come back and go forward and come back and never actually get anywhere, simply because there's nothing preventing that elastic recoil. Where's my hand here? That elastic recoil from sucking that pressure back into it. So, good thing for valves. So pulmonary artery goes to the lungs. Then from both sides, you can see one over here and then one of them over here. There's another one. Pulmonary veins. Veins are always bringing blood back to the heart. Arteries are always carrying blood away from the heart. And so then they end up in the left atrium here. And then we're going to pass the mitral or bicuspid valve. Apparently it looks like a bishop's mitre. You tell me. And then goes down into, where's my mouse? The left ventricle. Notice how much thicker the walls around the left ventricle are compared to the right ventricle. You can actually see like this thinning out down here and even up here versus just the general size of this. This is the chamber that's going to squeeze blood to the rest of your body. So it kind of makes sense that it needs to be a lot stronger versus this one is just going to your lungs, which are right next to your heart. And so that's not very far away. And then that's going to go up this red one here to the aorta. And so aorta is the biggest artery in the whole body, and it's going to carry blood to everywhere. And we aren't going to get into the specifics. When you get into anatomy, we'll say what these different arteries branching off of the aorta are. But then we have that aortic valve preventing that backflow. You're welcome to look at these videos to help you memorize that order of how blood flows, but I can't play them on here for copyright reasons. So what does blood do? Carries oxygen, carries waste away to the kidneys to be removed or to the liver to be removed. Transport nutrients and other substances, help fighting infections. All of our white blood cells are blood cells. They can flow around in our blood as well. Read this and just know that in here, all of this up top is plasma. This is called the buffy coat. It's white blood cells and platelets. And then down here is red blood cells. When blood comes out of your body, it's all mixed together. We put it in a centrifuge, spin it around, and then the things that are more dense and less dense separate out. Major blood types. We talked about these in genetics, right? Type A has the A antigen. Type B has a different antigen, which is why it gets a different name, B. AB has both of them, and O doesn't have any of them. And so this is why antigens are saying, hey, this belongs here. Anything else doesn't belong here. Hey, this belongs here. Anything else doesn't belong here. This is why anyone can receive type O, because there's nothing signaling that it can't belong. AB can accept anyone because it can accept B, it can accept A, it can accept B, or it can accept O, or it can accept AB because it's good with all of those antigens, those little flags saying whether it's okay to be here or not. Rh factor, this is what gives us the plus or minus blood. So you have A positive, A negative, and it's just another antigen, but it's made on a separate gene, and it seems to cause a different issue, not the same as if you have a difference between A or AB sort of thing. And so when that has an issue is during pregnancy. A woman with negative blood type, if her husband has positive blood type, then they have a chance of having a baby with positive blood type. In her first pregnancy, her body's going to build up antibodies against the positive blood type. And then if nothing bad happens to that first baby. If she later on has another baby that has positive blood type, her body will attack it while it's growing in there. Now, the nice thing is that there are medications to help prevent that attack. We lower the woman's immune system and her antibody defenses just with simple medication so that that doesn't happen. Types of blood vessels. Arteries carry blood away. Artery starts with an A. Away starts with an A. Veins carry blood to the heart. So keep in mind, in a lot of pictures, you see that arteries and veins are either red or blue. Red or blue actually it says that it's carrying oxygenated blood or deoxygenated blood. It doesn't mean that's an artery or vein. A lot of times it'll be one or the other, and so you start to make an incorrect correlation. And then capillaries are where these branch off at the very bottom, and or it's not at the very bottom, but like between our cells and tissues, where we get the oxygen onto the cells, get the carbon dioxide off of the cells, and we're able to do that gas exchange there. So we already said all of this in our earlier part, but you can go through and memorize this, going from the veins to the vena cava, the right atrium, left atrium, pulmonary artery, the lungs, pulmonary vein, the left atrium, left ventricle, aorta, arteries. Those go into smaller things called arterioles, then to capillaries. On the other end of those are venules that then branch into larger veins. That's the order of blood through the heart, through the body. What controls your heartbeat? You have something called a pacemaker. There's a natural one. People get an artificial one. I've got 1 minute left. Your pulse. Read these things. Okay, we got a stethoscope to listen to your heart. Listen to your heart. And blood pressure. Normal young person has a blood pressure of 120/70. As you get older, it becomes closer to 120/80. The top number is called systolic pressure. The bottom number is called diastolic pressure. So the top number is how much pressure is there when your heart squeezes blood to the next place. And then the bottom number is how much pressure is there when it opens back up to squeeze again. It is measured with, say it with me, sphygmomanometer. Sphygmomanometer. That's the blood pressure cuff. Okay, so there's readings there. You can pause it and take a look at the picture. I'm running out of time. Last page. Ailments. Hypertension is blood pressure. Stroke, not getting blood to the brain. Heart attack, not getting blood to the heart. all that blood that's flowing around in the heart doesn't actually go to the heart. It has to get its